I had resentments against my whole family. I'm like, I'm going to get rich and famous skateboarding, and then I'm going to show them,
Yeah.
and then that all happened, and then obviously that doesn't fix the real underlying problems, and then they came out in different ways through drugs and alcohol and acting out. And
This is the Knockin Doorz Down podcast, featuring celebrities, experts, and everyday people who have overcome adversities, including addiction, mental health, and trauma, to live purposeful lives. And that's what Knockin Doorz Down is all about. Jason the Chance here, a commercial-free version of this conversation. Hey, I want to tell you I've got some exciting news on things that I'm doing, and I'd appreciate you following me there. I am going to be producing and sometimes co-hosting a new podcast that's showing to be very successful, and it's in the same wheelhouse. It's called We're Out of Time with Richard Tate.
The We're Out of Time podcast with Richard Tate, featuring two-time NBA champion Lamar Odom.
You were in a coma, right?
For 3 days. They told me I wasn't even going to talk again, let alone walk.
Musician and social media influencer Andrea Russett.
As of today, 2 weeks.
Star of Netflix Tall Girl Ava Michelle.
The next morning, I found him, and
You found him?
I did find him.
Personal stylist Parker Noriega.
These kind of doctors, majority of the time, are yes doctors.
Ken Kraft, the founder of Hope the Mission.
I had my own broken world experience. I lost everything.
On the We're Out of Time podcast with the man who revolutionized addiction treatment, Richard Tate. Subscribe now on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube, and we'll see you next Tuesday.
Richard is one of the premier individuals in addiction, treatment, and recovery. And he started the We're Out of Time podcast. I'm producing it. I'm going to be co-hosting. He's had so many amazing guests, celebrities talking about their addiction struggles, recovery, mental health, and so much more. Please give it a follow. The link is in the podcast description, youtube.com/@Richard Tate. Or if you're listening to the podcast, search for We're Out of Time, and you'll find the podcast there. And you'll be hearing and seeing me on there, so if you want to remain connected with me, that's the place to do it. Or some of you may know that I do work for PAIN, Parents and Addicts in Need, a nonprofit helping those and their families through the process of addiction and recovery. And I've included links for all that and the podcast that we do called Don't Hide the Scars down below in the description. And I put my email there as well. I've had so many people reach out through Knockin Doorz Down asking to be connected to services, and that is the best way to get a hold of me, jason@painnonprofit.org. All right, we're going commercial free here on out. Join me on the Knockin Doorz Down podcast. Brandon Turner, what is going on, good sir?
hey, how's it going, man? How you doing? Thanks for having.
Yeah, absolutely. My former co-host, Mikey, who's a huge fan of yours, he wanted me to tell you this, Brandon. He said, tell him that his switch hard flip down Carlsbad was epic. And that's the moment he realized he would never be a pro skater.
Oh man, much love, Mikey. Sorry couldn't have you, here too, but much love, and I appreciate you. And yeah, but as far as skateboarding, what I would say to that is, no matter what you see, it's none of your business, and it has nothing to do with you if you want to keep progressing.
Yeah, that's a good point for anything in life, right?
Yeah, what everyone else does, don't ever let it discourage you. And everybody has their own style and way of expressing their art, and whether that's in sports, like physically, spiritually, or mentally. I would get influenced by other people, but only to get on your own trajectory and path.
Yeah, I agree. Brandon, I like to start my conversations with gratitude. So what's 3 things you're grateful for today?
I'm grateful for waking up today, first and foremost, because we take a lot of things for granted, and you're really not promised tomorrow. So just being able to wake up today, have a fresh start on this Monday, be able to get up and start fresh, and I'm thankful for my recovery community, and I'm thankful for being able to have my new venture, which is Westside Recovery, and have my own facility, and that's real huge to me. And every day I wake up, I'm super grateful for that. But just I keep it basic, and then as I go into my day and I start meditation, and I do a gratitude list, I'll extend on that.
Yeah. So what are those morning practices for you? Because I've been doing a little bit better job. I kind of, through my recovery, Brandon, realized I've never identified having like a severe anxiety disorder. So I've had to start doing some different routines that I've learned from people with more knowledge and time. What kind of is Brandon Turner, your eyes open up and, your approach to the morning?
Well, I wake up and sometimes, sometimes we just I can't speak for everybody, but just seeing, and just seeing like people and how they usually start their day. Sometimes you just wake up like, as say, like the wrong side of the bed, and you might just be feeling like self-doubt, feeling bad about yourself, feeling this, oh, I need to be doing this, I. And you start off your day with living in the ego, so when I wake up, I try to start with that gratitude list in my head right away, like, hey, I'm thankful for being able to wake up, even if I didn't get enough go to sleep at the time I wanted to last night and I feel all groggy, like I'm grateful for another day. And then I'll wake up and do the normal stuff, brush my teeth and stuff, and I'll get a good stretch in to get the blood flowing for the day and just kind of get a head change. And then I'll go into a meditation, like 10-minute meditation. And then I'll get up and have breakfast and stuff, and then go on about my day. And I believe like eating in the morning is one of the most important things to have a productive day.
Yeah, because that absence of nutrients, I don't know if you dealt with this through your recovery, but that halt, hungry, angry, lonely, tired, those 4 kind of triggers for certain things. And, leaving that absence of nutrition there. I mean, we get some hangry attitudes at times, man.
Yeah, it's irritable, restless, and discontent. You got to pay attention to those 3,
Yeah, for sure. Let me ask you though, you said something, and when we talked to Andy Roy, when Mikey was still my co-host here on the show, he too premised skateboarding as an art, not a sport. How do you kind of look at it?
Well, from where we're at now, I mean, it is technically a sport because it's being it's being competed at that level with the Olympics and everything. But in my heart and in my feeling, like skateboarding is more of art, a form of expression. And nowadays, people might look at it as like just a sport or a job or whatever it is. And I've had to do all 3 things, but where I'm most content is to where it started, and just as an art form, a form of expression, healthy release of endorphins, a good outlet.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting how you can, I don't know, different athletes from different, genres of athleticism, when you talk to them. I mean, I remember as a kid, like Michael Jordan talking about like, yeah, I can score 2 points, or I can, have a dunk in a way that, it's like poetry in motion, and there's a greater impact to that. So it's interesting how, athletes, because I do consider you an athlete and many other skateboarders. I mean, just in amazing conditioning, especially nowadays. I think so many people are getting more switched on, but that there is some art form in the delivery of what you do,
Yeah, it's I would just say it in these simple words. It's not what you do, it's how you do it.
Yeah.
And that's going back to your friend who was saying that after he seen that trick, he was just, done. And it doesn't really matter how good you are, how good you think you are, because for one, skateboarding is infinite. There's no way you can do every trick ever. And everyone has their own expressions, the way they dress, their style, the way they do their tricks, and that's what's beautiful about it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, let's dig into a little bit more. I kind of want to know, I hadn't heard too many conversations you kind of talking about, little Brandon and really where the skateboarding developed? Because you moved around a lot as a kid, right?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, tell me a little bit more about that.
My dad got stationed in Japan when I was 6 in the military after the Gulf War. And so we moved to Japan, and like right away, I got engulfed into the Japanese society community, and I skated before then, but that's where my real roots were seated, was in Japan, and my family that I developed over there and the culture and all that.
I'll be damned. I didn't realize, because I've been to Japan. I was there for, I think it was almost 3 weeks, and beautiful people and just a wonderful place. But I wasn't aware there was any skate culture at any time.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's like in the 90s, early 90s, like you just had to know or you didn't know. And I think skating in Japan kind of went up and down,
Mm-hmm.
up and down. And if it's especially now with the Olympics and stuff, it's really accepted now. So a lot of more skaters are coming out of the woodwork. And in Japan, when I was growing up there, like the best skateboarders I ever seen were in Japan. So I was just waiting for this 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 cycle to come.
Yeah. It's interesting to think about Japan, because when I went there, and you living there, like everyone is that I encountered was incredibly respectful of other people's space. And I just, it's hard for me to kind of picture in Japan, kind of what I've seen with the LA scene. And I grew up near Santa Cruz, California, you know, skaters, skaters hitting every like public landmark. And, it's like, oh, can I rail that? Okay, I can, I'm going to. And I just find it hard to like picture that going on in Japan.
Yeah, it's you just got to maneuver. Like skateboarding is just maneuvering, being able to adapt to your environment. So it's forever changing. So in Japan, it's interesting, especially with the cultural aspect and the honorary system in Japan. So
Yeah.
it's early on you might have been looked down for skating in Japan by like the elders and stuff, but people just take time to really understand the art craft.
So let's kind of talk in some of the positives and negatives of the skateboard culture that you experienced. Because like I said, we had talked with Andy Roy, and he grew up right around where I did. It's funny, we were laughing like we could have been in the same place at the same time. But people like Andrew Reynolds as well, talking about, going through that drug culture. There was a lot of the videos that were put out that a lot of us watched where it was like, if you weren't messed up, you weren't skating, so to speak. So how did you, because you got in, how was 16 when you kind of started skating professionally or heading that direction?
14,
14.
my first sponsor. So at first, 14 to 16, it wasn't really about that. Like for me, my team, we were just working, getting to it. But when I got signed by bigger companies like Shorties and stuff, like it was the perfect timing where it was kind of marketed to be, like this rock star lifestyle and just kind of having fun, you know, bridging skateboarding and having fun together and marketing that also with the fashion and our lifestyle.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say it was just like all negative, because I had the best times ever, but eventually later, for myself, my own boundaries and my own trauma that I went through and stuff, I wasn't able to, drink responsibly or experiment and leave it alone, so.
Do you mind touching on some of those areas of trauma? It's interesting that you mentioned that.
Yeah, well, I had childhood trauma that I never got therapy for or got addressed, because really I was in the skate culture. So if anything I was struggling with or going through personally, I didn't feel comfortable enough to express that really, because there was just this stigma of a man gets his stuff together and handles his own business and deal with it, So I had childhood trauma just with, identity being raised by my grandparents and not knowing because I thought they were my parents and, my, who I thought were my brothers and sisters were my aunts and uncles. And one of my sisters turned out to be my mom and stuff. And the whole reason why my mom decided to do that is because she felt that like my mom was unfit to raise me. So she just basically like took me from her. And I didn't know till I was moving to Japan, like on the plane, and found out that. And right there, like my whole world got kind of flipped upside down. And that's when my trust issues started.
Yeah.
And I just looked at it like my whole family lied to me of like, what the truth was. And that's why I was able to start skating on a high level because I didn't really have the fear. Me looking at it now is like I had so much pain that I had bottled inside that the fear of skating didn't exist. Couldn't amount up to that. So I didn't care if I got hurt. So I was willing to try anything. So in a way that helped put me on a different level on an athleticism way because I just didn't have no fear because of that trauma, but it never got dealt with correctly. So even though my whole plan was to just like, hey, I had resentments against my whole family. I'm like, I'm going to get rich and famous skateboarding and then I'm going to show them,
Yeah.
and then, that all happened. And then obviously that doesn't fix the real underlying problems. And then they came out in different ways through drugs and alcohol and acting out and all of that.
Did you ever have a process of reconciliation with anyone in your family about this and maybe why they, I get it. I get maybe from a standpoint, like, the protecting of kids, but I don't know. My perspective as a parent is I do the best to educate and be open and honest, and that's the best method of protection. But were you ever able to like have a conversation with anyone?
Yeah, there's plenty of conversations, mostly like heated and frustration and just entitlement of like, hey, we did this to save you, like you would have been this way and that way. And, but they weren't hearing me where I was coming from, I felt like, and it just really bothered me. So there's like with my mom and stuff, like I get it now that I'm older, like I'm glad she did that. I got raised as an only child, lived in Japan without them, because my aunts and uncles were way older than me, which was always weird. I was just the baby, but they were just my aunts and uncles, not my brothers and sisters. So I was raised as an only child and grew up in Japan and learned a whole different culture, and it really changed my life for the better. I can see that now, but growing up as a teenager and going through these emotions, I just had big resentments, and I had to, without the program of like going through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous and everything, I wouldn't have had the tools to properly deal with these issues I had that were affecting the rest of my life.
Yeah. Brenny, I can relate so much, man. Like, like why wasn't there this vulnerability there? I could have handled it, as we were talking before. I grew up in a home with an addict. Come to find out, we had a multitude of generational trauma on both sides of my family and addiction. But I look back and it's like, yeah, it was unfortunate that I didn't, wasn't made more aware of these things. Cause I was a weird teenager in that I knew addiction was going on in the home. I knew I had some really internal issues that I was really struggling with, identity and so many different things. But I was a guy that was a real late bloomer with people or with my addiction. People never believed that. Like I didn't really start touching alcohol or anything till like 22, So it's kind of a trip of where a lot of this stuff manifests and when it starts to come out.
Yeah, it is. And me, it was just early, and it started off as fun. And and it was super fun. I was living my dream, had everything I wanted, but I didn't understand that it was buried. My traumas were buried, and I had a lot of issues, and they didn't come out till later when I was wasted. And people be like, what's wrong? Blacking out and, just acting crazy. But it's because I had underlying like real trauma, and it would come out through the alcohol.
Oh yeah, I know all too well, man. Trust me, I know. You
Yeah.
know, I don't know about you. I could be a hit or miss. It was either the phone call, I was sitting and crying, like blubbering my guts out, or I was incredibly angry, and neither one of them made sense to the person on the other end answering the phone at that time.
Absolutely. Going out, did you ever have to experience just like, waking up and having to apologize to people and all of that, and just like, hey, I don't know what happened. I'm sorry, like I'm glad I don't have to live like that no more.
Oh, yes, and I'm glad I don't have to live that more in abundance. Probably more than I care to count, Brandon. Like how many times I had to do that and making apologies, and it won't happen again. And that cunning disease of addiction. I mean, I know you were there too. Like, "Oh, that's the last time I'm doing it. I'm done drinking or I'm done using," and then
Oh,
you do the next
uh,
day.
then in a blackout again. For you, how long you been in recovery?
5 years, and then I fell off. It'll be 2 years, February 15th of next year. So I fell off almost 2 years ago.
Okay, beautiful.
Yeah.
Glad you're back. You know,
Thanks. Me
yeah.
too, man. Thank you. Yeah, it's people, I've had many people go, "Oh, well, it was just part of your recovery process." And I went, "No, it's part of the disease of addiction that reared its ugly head." But I learned something from that instance. It was a night, it was like an isolated incident when that occurred. And, it came back to my boundaries. I was terrible with boundaries, horrible.
Yeah, making the correct boundaries is just that's everything, like you have kids, and it's just I guess what helped for me is just like what helped for me with boundaries was just like any situation that I don't feel like I can have, my daughter's 21 now, but if any situation, this is when I was younger, I was like any situation that I can't have my baby girl sitting there right there with me, I don't need to be at.
Mm.
You know?
Yeah, I've never thought of it that way. That's
Hmm.
that's a pretty good way to look at it.
Yeah.
And how do you, being a guy that you're out, you're in the public eye, you're doing so much work for recovery, and I want to get more into asking you some stuff about that a little later, but you're a famous face, and how do you kind of handle that differently now, maybe with people coming up wanting a little bit of your time, an autograph, or whatever it is?
I think it all positive. I obviously, with boundaries and managing my time is a big thing, but I feel like I'm more present, and I definitely appreciate it more, and I'm able to connect and relate with people on a whole different level just because with this work and all the work I've done on myself, it really just helps me to feel more connected, and we have amazing communities, so it's less stressful than it was when I was younger, just kind of feeling uncomfortable in my own skin, being like wasted or not wasted, or on tour, and just like kind of having my life like being successful, and but my whole life is a mess and unmanaged, and just it was managed, but I was unmanaged. It was managed by like, oh, our tour coordinator, or my itinerary with planes that I'd miss all the time or whatever, but nowadays I just feel more connected and feel like I have something something to bring forward to the table that maybe I didn't have before, but without those past experiences I wouldn't have had everything I have now. So that's
Mhm.
why I'm doing this work to help people through my experience, and hopefully, change some lives or give a different perspective of different people's situations.
Yeah. Well, and tell me what you think about this. Is that for me one of the greatest joys, because well, I actually feel genuine joy now. It's not manufactured. It wasn't, somebody
Yeah.
didn't deliver it to me through a plant or a pill or a drink.
Yeah.
Is like looking in the mirror and being like, I'm good with myself. Even through hardships, like I like who I am, and I'm liking myself more every day.
Yes, absolutely. And that's a big thing too. It's just how many times you look at yourself in the mirror and give yourself that self-talk, like, hey, I love you. You're doing good. You know, keep up the hard work. Like you're amazing. And it might sound weird, but that's really important. And that's why I say like with meditation too. It's just some people say they can't really meditate. No, I just can't. My mind races and whatever. And sometimes I tell people like, hey, it would be something good to practice with, because if you can't stand yourself for 10 minutes a day, like how could you expect anybody else to,
That's a good point. You know what? I'm going to steal that for people when they ask me, because it's still a challenge for me, Brandon. I do
Yeah.
have that, but I continue to have people reassure me, the more it is much like anything else. It's the practice of, and it's not the guarantee of. And I try to remember that, because I'm the wake up, and no one's phrased it for me in the way you did, that when you're sitting there and all these things, and that's where my brain goes, that's
Mhm.
sitting in ego. I hadn't thought of it that way,
Yeah.
so really, without realizing it, you're giving me more encouragement to stick with it, because eventually this practice of meditation or whatever it is, it will start to click more and more. It's no different than learning to skateboard, or for me, playing bass guitar, or acting, or all these other things that I've done.
Yeah. It just takes time and practice and patience with yourself, and that's super important. I mean, meditation is huge, it's just you can look at it as praying or whatever, but just sitting there being with yourself, breathing, if you have to count or whatever, or count your breaths. Or I tell some people, count down from 50, but then count down from 49, then count down from 48, like whatever you have to do to just keep yourself there.
Yeah. Because and the counting's really a good recommendation, because it occupies the mind. It's hard to think of anything else when we're going through a counting procedure.
You can try affirmations to yourself, whatever you're feeling in that moment. um you know I'm going to be great today. I'm going to be great today. Like whatever you have to like do, say in your head to like keep you there. Put on your timer for 10 minutes and just breathe, and that's what it is. And it's just the hardest part, like people say in the gym, the hardest part is getting to the gym,
Yeah.
and then you can make it happen. It's only 10 minutes a day. I mean, I really encourage everybody to meditations, the key to the infinite intelligence.
Yeah. Hey, Brandon, I want to ask you about the uncomfortable accessory of addiction. It's called handcuffs. They suck. You and I both know this. You went 17 months, 18 months that you had to serve.
I went to prison for, I got sentenced to 3 years. Got a good time. I did 17 months, and that was a whole experience. And what's so crazy is I wouldn't have changed it for nothing, because it it was a learning experience that was necessary in my journey.
Yeah.
And what I learned from it was that, like we said in the beginning of this interview, the gratitude. Uh, I realized I took for granted a lot of things in this life that aren't right. They're privileges, and when I got out, just the simple thing, being able to just use the bathroom like in privacy was huge.
Right.
I was like, wow, I can't appreciate this bathroom more than anything. Like when I was in reception, I was in solitary confinement for 4 months, going through just classification before even getting to prison. So 24-hour, 23-hour day, it's like just in a cell all day long, mostly 24-hour a day. We got yard probably once a week, but I was 24 hours in the cell, and like you have to learn. That's where I first learned what programming is
Mm.
and how important that is. Not in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, but just your program, your own CPU. You know, like how does your program really work when without all these distractions? If you have to go to work, you have your kids or your family. How good are you with you in four walls with nothing to do?
How good were you at first?
I wanted to at first. I wanted to see the medical doctor, and I wanted to get sleeping pills.
Mm.
That was my first go to because I was just like, I'm gonna be in here for this much time until I get transferred. I'm like, I'd rather just be asleep because that's how horrible it is, you know. And then somebody told me I was like trying to slip the piece of paper through the cells so the guard can walk by and grab it for like a whole day. And my somebody said through the walls there's these holes in the walls in the it was called ASEC in Chino because it was overcrowded, so that's why I was in solitary confinement. But he said through the wall, and I'll never forget it. In the other cell, he's all hey, he's all, let me holler at you. And I'm like, hey, what's up, man? I'm trying to get this ducket so I can see the nurse. And, you know, because we would talk through the walls. There's holes through the walls and the vents. And he's like, hey, you take them pills, you're going to come out different. And I was like, and that really stuck with me. And I was just like, oh, wow, I'm not trying to get out of here and be a completely different person because you see that. And that's the first time that I was like, yeah, you know, who knows what psych meds I get on and then end up, some people will go in there without a mental health issue and go in there and get on some medication that's not managed correctly and get out on and have to be on disability because they're not mentally stable and they've been on this medication for this many years or whatever.
When you went in, were you at a point where your using led to like a detox or withdrawal or any of that stuff?
When I first went in there, I was withdrawing, but I didn't know I was withdrawing.
Oh.
So I was partying all the time leading up to that, and then just got put in there. And I remember people going to medical and being like, they're like, "Oh, do you have any drug addiction? Do you have anything?" I'd be like, people are like, I need this, I can't sleep, I'm shaking. And I would just go, I'm like, no, I'm fine. And then I was in my cell in county jail. Now, what I know now, back then I couldn't sleep. I was shaking, like hearing stuff, like having the tremors. And I was like, wow, I was withdrawing. I could have had a seizure and died.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Damn. Yeah, and I've spoken with so many people that a similar kind of circumstance, and some of them's like the most we got was maybe a Tylenol, and some people, the other swing, like, yeah, I got loaded up with too much stuff. It like almost to the point of kept my addiction going. Thus, I found within the system, who was holding, who could I get whatever from, and one dude talking about I've traded my ramen for I forget what pills it was, so it was pretty interesting how for you, it was, you got that message to almost avoid staying within the system of addiction within incarceration.
Yes, absolutely.
It's bananas, man.
A hard thing. It was a hard thing to do because there's more drugs and stuff in there than there's the streets, I believe.
Yeah, that's what I've heard some people say. It's like readily available.
Yeah, always. It's like a whole nother city in there.
Yeah. How did you keep it then on the straight and narrow and kind of avoid it? I mean, you got this one cat that communicated that with you, but did that really help with all of a sudden like an intentional living, for lack of a better term? Like, no, when I get out, I want my life different.
Yeah, it was starting to hit me. I definitely just started reading and studying and get my routine. Like what I was saying was programming. I'd wake up in the morning, like have breakfast, have a little nap, wake up or after that and start and work out and have a full routine, and then I would like bird bath because you couldn't shower, so I would with a cup I would wash clean myself in the cell and then kick out the water under the cell and then clean the cell and kind of like get clean, and then I'd start reading, and then reading, writing, meditating and stuff, and then by dinner rolls around, we I would eat dinner and then had a little Walkman in there, and would had a porter who had a cell phone time, so I paid for time for that. He'd slide it under the door, so I had to have a whole program inside that cell to keep from going insane.
Yeah, I could only imagine. What was the first big changes for you when you were released? Because yeah, like you said, you did good time, so you were about half your sentence, a little over half your sentence that you served.
Yeah, like a month shy of half of it, and then when I got out, well, what happened is I went to school and went to training for a fire camp. So I got transferred to a fire camp. So I was firefighting and doing that. So I learned a whole lot with that and stuff. So, I was able to stay in shape and just stay on point and, and work out and plan a lot and read. And that's what I just look at it as, is like, I'm going to use this like I'm going to a university. I'm going to get all the stuff I want to learn and study, and I'm gonna do that, make my plans for when I get out and stuff. So I just looked at it in that positive aspect.
How did it work for you, like leaving the safety of the 12-step rooms and stuff like that for kind of returning into the world of skateboarding that you came from, that was maybe a contributing factor towards your downfall? How did you return to it and want to present you as far as the brand, quote unquote, Brandon Turner, differently?
I just changed my narrative from, being a wild, crazy party person to like, hey, what I'm gonna give back to skateboarding is influencing, helping others through my experience and what I've been through, and sharing my story. And helping those who may or may not have had the same struggles day to day. And it took time, because it's not overnight. Like people are going to accept you change. It took like, at least a year for people to even slightly started taking me seriously on this path and journey I was on. But eventually, getting back to your question about how I immersed myself back in, was with boundaries. And boundaries that with myself, with that simple rule, like you can put that in any perspective. Like, hey, if I can't have my mom sitting here with me in any situation, like I don't belong there. Simple things that nothing good happens after 12. I don't need to be outside driving around or whatever. I don't have to make it to every party and be a people pleaser and be everywhere, because in the skateboard industry, we just have things going on all the time. So I just prioritize it with my boundaries and myself and what I have going on, and kind of take that inventory to see if it's worth me going to or not going to certain things, or being around certain people, and putting myself in situations, because ultimately anything that happens or doesn't happen is your fault. It's really a choice. So there's been a couple of times where I've been in some situations where people have like pulled out drugs, and I look at it like that's my cue. Feeling bad about leaving or saying bye to anyone or not, I don't freak out and be like, whoa, hey, you got cocaine on the table? What are you thinking? I'm in recovery. I'm just like, if I'm not in those situations like that anyways, but I'm saying it has happened. And even if it's in a public area, when I see what's going on, it's just like, then that's my cue to to exit and go.
Yeah. Unapologetically.
No, yeah, not at all. I don't say bye to anyone. I'm just like, yeah, I'm gonna head out. See ya. I'm like, I'll see
Yeah.
y'all later.
It was tough for me. Tell me if you went through. I had a real tough time with no period being a sentence, and that was enough.
Yeah. It's hard because we're people pleasers. We want people to like us, and the thing of it is you can't, not everybody's gonna like you, whether you know it or not, this is a hard truth. Like you you know some people who don't like you, and you may not know that they don't like you, but everybody's not gonna like you. There's people who don't like me who, I probably associate with or whatever, and that's fine because you know what? It's none of my business of what you think of me.
Exactly. And that's a tough lesson. I still struggle. Thanks for sharing, man, that I'm not alone in that, but I've gotten to that point, and I've started to look at it as a favor. Like, you're doing me a favor, You've made it clear. I know there's people that follow me on social media or whatever, simply hoping that I fail or to have some trash to talk or whatever it is. And it's like, okay.
Yeah, well, the thing of it is, man, it's just like it's necessary. It has to be that way for anything to work. You know what I mean? Because if there was no if there was no like bad, say for instance this example, then there'd be no good. So if there's only just good, you wouldn't even know what good is.
Yeah.
So there has to be the both. It's necessary so you can appreciate the good.
Yeah. Yeah, we can't have Luke Skywalker without Darth Vader, right?
Absolutely, because then it would just that's just like life. That's nature. That's like physics. That's just what it is,
Yeah.
So to be obsessed on who likes you and who doesn't like you or this, that, and the other, that's just kind of insane because there's no way you can have it your way, just all good all the time, because the other aspect has to exist for you to be able to experience sad or happiness or anything.
Yeah. The gambit of life as is, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, tell me about the recovery center and why you decided to get into that area of work.
Well, because like I was explaining, it was super difficult for me to ask for help or even to know that was help, or that I was under the delusion that nobody really would understand what I've been through as an individual and my unique circumstances of what happened in my life. And I just didn't think that, sounds crazy me saying it, but I just didn't think that nobody could relate to that. Or I thought for sure nobody's been through this messed up situation. It's only happened to me. So I wanted to open up my own facility so I can bring like a diverse approach to therapy, including with the traditional, group therapy and psychiatrists and case managers and all that. I just wanted to bring something that people can relate to, like, the skating program, yoga, Pilates, and music program and art and stuff. So people because artists and creators sometimes just don't feel like they can relate to just therapists because there's no back and forth. It's just kind of like, how are you doing, and why do you feel that way, and how do you feel that way, and what makes you, what do you think about when there's no I think it's just like kind of how they're trained to some therapists too do relate, but not to share about themselves.
I found a lot of power in that through group work, and I don't just mean like an anonymous group setting, but actual where there's some really good crosstalk and people giving each other one another's perspective and support and even questions. That's where some of the most powerful work for me, especially as of late, has really started to. I've seen the benefits of it.
It's the relatability, and that's why I wanted to open up my own facility. I've been to a program before and it was really good stuff. There's a super good facilitator and I learned a lot there, but I wasn't there yet. I didn't believe I needed to be sober yet. I just thought it was some good information so I can have other resources not to get into trouble. And I just missed the whole point and stuff. So I was thinking to myself, like, this can evolve, and I feel like I can bring something huge to this table with people who struggle to reaching out to get help. I felt like not only the skateboard community, but just people in life, like, hey, I've been to prison, I've been through all these different things, had it all, not had it all. And had these traumatic experiences and anxiety and family stuff, problems with drugs, just everything to where I felt I've went through my journey enough to where I feel like I can almost relate with anybody and get on their level or them on my level to give them the help they need.
Absolutely. Brandon, before we get to random questions and I leave you with the final thought, if people want to know more about your facility, the work you're doing, how can they find that? And we'll include the link in the description.
Yes, please. My Instagram is B as in boy, Turner _. If you want to check out the website for West Side Recovery, it's West Side Recovery SD.com. And for mental health, it's MHC San Diego.com.
All right. Cool, man. I'm proud of you, and I'm proud that you're, using your life experience as well as your platform to be able to give back and really help a lot of others with your story. And we didn't even get into the work that you're doing when you go and talk to the youth and the skateboarding, work with the youth and all that. So maybe down the line we'll get a round 2 or something in there. But
Anytime, man, I'm down, dude, and I appreciate you having me. And another, person in recovery too, doing what you're doing creatively and living in your power. And of course, I know having a podcast and everything, and you see comments or not comments or everything, but anytime I get negative comments from anybody, I just, keep it up. I just keep it positive. I'm just like, hey, thank you. Thank you for the insight. Thank you, for letting me see it that way, because, if, movement is medicine, and whether you're moving or not, or as long as you're moving and you're creating your ripples in the universe, and if somebody reacts to it, whether this way or that way, it's something. You're still touching someone.
Yeah. Good point. You know what? I hadn't thought of it that way. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. No matter what they say, you're like, but you were touched because you spent the time to respond.
Dude, thank you for that, because that is one of the things that you're right, as a people pleaser and wanting to be loved too much, that I struggle with. You have completely changed my way I'm going to see that from now on.
Yeah, you got to have both sides, because one couldn't exist without the other.
Yeah. All right, random questions, Brandon. These are just for fun. I just throw them out there. If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
It'd probably be able to, I don't know, man, that's what's it called? Superpower. To be able what's it called? To be able to be in any place, any place in a split second.
So like teleportation?
Yeah, teleportation.
Is that just because you hate the flying and travel and TSA, or?
And plus, feel like I can help more people that way. Teleportation.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you could have dinner with any one person, living or not, who would they be?
Probably Napoleon Hill and Malcolm X.
Interesting. So I'm curious, what about Napoleon Hill?
Because I believe he's broken through, like he's helped me a lot in my journey, just with his teachings and stuff, and I would just want to know more. Yeah. I'm influenced by a lot of people. I mean, so many people to so many people I would want to have dinner with, like Tony Robbins, um, Napoleon Hill, Neville Goddard, just anyone, interested in elevating our consciousness.
Yeah. I think a lot of people s- sleep on Napoleon Hill and don't realize the influence of the work that he's done that has found its way into, that, lack of a better term, self-help movement, self-growth, whatever you want to call it, and not gotten the credit for.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right. Let's say they are going. Some company comes to you, Brandon, and goes, "Hey, I want to license your life story as either a TV show or a movie. Who would you want to play adult you?"
Adult me?
Yeah.
Um, Probably this kid named Takao. He's
Okay.
from Japanese and Black.
Okay. I dig it.
Hmm.
I haven't
Hmm.
heard of him. I'll have to look him up. But I think it would be a pretty cool story, man. I think you got a great Netflix series there for something that would really help people,
Hey, I think it might be in the works,
All right. Well, if you have a buddy that in your past that was like a 6'2" white guy that's that's like 180 soaking wet, hit me up. I'll play that role.
Okay, perfect. His name was Ben.
All right. Sweet. I'll play
Yeah,
Ben.
yeah, sure, man.
Oh heck. All right, last one for you here. This is kind of an interesting one that some people surprisingly struggle with. And especially being, you've lived in isolation, but you're on a deserted island and you have one music artist's greatest hits and one movie with you. What would they be?
It'd probably be Bob Marley and Count of Monte Cristo.
Really?
Yeah,
How would when did that movie get you?
a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Count of Cristo. It's like one of my favorite movies, and it's inspiring.
Yeah. It is a wonderful film for sure. Man, I could go on and on about that now. I was not expecting that, but I know that we're running low on our time here. Brandon,
Okay.
I like to leave the floor to you. Anything that you want to lend for someone out there struggling, maybe they have a loved one that is that, just some wisdom you want to pass along.
I just want to say, thank you, Jason, for having me on your podcast. And I would just want to say to people, like we started this interview, the gratitude list. If you're struggling, and have waking up in the morning just feeling down on yourself, wherever you live, the gratitude list is huge. I would definitely dive into meditation. If you need support, there's plenty of support groups out there for just women, just for men's. If you're struggling with substance abuse, like drugs and alcohol or mental health, there's plenty of resources out there. And if you would want my influence and help, my company is West Side Recovery. Our Instagram's The West Recovery. Our website's westsiderecoverysd.com. For mental health, it's mhcsandiego.com. And you are not alone and you have support with whatever in life you're going through. And just know there's one fact in this world: there's nothing in this world you can do alone. So don't ever feel like you are.